A very good evening. Here we are. So, let's put this stuff away here. So, I was chopping wood in the shed and I found myself having a little bit of inspiration to talk again. I was, well, first of all, very warm welcome. As I'm smoking a cigar today. Very warm welcome in this cold room as we're approaching freezing temperatures right now. A lovely time of year, of course, when you have a wood stove. And I was making some more kindling today, and I was wondering about a certain topic of power and influence, and where our power and influence lies in life. And excuse me for picking my nose here. My youngest son reminded me today that it can be quite difficult to be a young child and to realize that there is very little you can do. You have very little power over over most things in life. My nose is itchy. So they do a lot of gaming. Not too much. I mean, they come out of school and they are allowed to go gaming for 2 hours a day, sometimes a bit more. And in that game, they are all powerful, right? They are the man. They can do pretty much everything they want. They can be the hero of the game. They can change the whole world. They can win battles. Sure enough, they lose some as well. But they can pretty much do whatever they please in that game. And then when the gaming time is over, well, it's back to reality. And the reality of the matter is obviously that you cannot keep acting like that hero in real life. You cannot be acting tough and jump around over the couch and you know what, and fight your battles with your brothers. I mean, it's a massive change back to how life was, and for them there's just not much they can influence. If they're lucky, they can influence what I'm cooking for dinner that day, or maybe what clothing they are wearing, or just a few things they can influence. But that power that lies in the game, I mean, that's such a massive difference. And I realized how frustrating it must be for them. I never really realized it in that context. But how frustrating it must be for them to be all powerful for those 2-3 hours. And then all of a sudden you're back as a child, and you simply have to listen to what you are told. And somewhere you want to teach your children that they are all powerful and that they can achieve things and that they can create the world in the way they see fit by creating their own personal little space, even though we experience more and more influence on our personal space, more and more, right? I mean, we don't have to beat around the bush. We all feel the influence on our personal space increasing more and more to a level that is, well, not acceptable, let's say. And we can say that because that's the power we can put forward. into the world, as we are still allowed that in some places. But this whole story reminded me also of me watching movies like The Lord of the Rings, and sometimes getting a little bit frustrated that you know you can watch all these movies, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, all the futuristic movies like Star Wars, Star Trek, you name it, and there is so much in there that obviously would be a lot of fun if you could do it yourself in real life. And sometimes there is so much of that that it kind of becomes frustrating. And it makes you wonder, where does my power lie? Where does my influence lie? What can I do in a certain situation to turn the tide? Now, I've been on social media for a long time. I know I can influence here and there. I know I can steer the opinions of people that have way more followers than me, and therefore I can steer them in a certain direction sometimes, and sometimes not. So look, there is some influence, and then they exercise that influence, and the message gets spread. So that's a lot of fun, you could say. Um, but obviously, in a certain real situation, can you raise your staff like Gandalf and and display a burst of power and all of a sudden change the whole situation? Well, obviously not. Now, luckily for Americans, you have your own boomstick that we are not allowed here in Europe, even though we can have some toys, some air-powered rifles that are getting pretty good these days. But it's not the same, obviously. Um, but surely there are ways that you can control the outcome of a situation or the development of a situation. And I think I'm gonna contemplate this tonight. There's still a bit of life in this cigar. There we go. So that's a topic I'm gonna contemplate tonight by myself here in this room. Where does my power lie? And in what situation can I exercise that power to make a difference? Right? It's interesting, and obviously, um, for men always looking at the worst case scenarios and survival, we may place ourselves in some very elaborate scheme or idea, and what we can do at that point. But realistically, I think it would be far more valuable to realize what we can do on a daily basis amongst our own family, our children, our loved one, and to act a little bit different for them also to show a bit of a different outcome. And I think we can all be very convinced that there is more magic there than we realize. That by simply using different words, or a loving touch, or whatever it is, we can make a massive difference in how the people around us feel during the day, transforming that whole day into something else. And that day will carry through into the next and the next. Now, this is not about a manipulation, it's about understanding your role in the situation and how you can be loving and kind and caring in a certain way. Even though as men we are not always, well, the most appreciative or sensitive when it comes down to stories and difficulties of the people around us. Many times my children are dealing with something, I say, man up and just keep going. And my wife as well sometimes. I try to listen, but and at the end of the day, for me, it's not about listening. It's also about solving it. And women obviously like just somebody to listen to them and then figure it out for themselves. No, I messed it up. I messed it up. Where's my lighter? I always have lighters in my pocket. Many. Oh shit. I sometimes like to blow in the cigar to cause a flame, but when you've already smoked a bit, you're gonna have a fountain of sparks, not ideal for your clothing. But you get what I mean, right? We all do it. Uh, At least that's what I imagine to be. We all are sometimes a bit short of words, and we don't really show the care that we sometimes need to show. But that's one of the magic powers that we have, and also locally in our village or city, when the peace is disturbed, whether it's by orcs, like in the Lord of the Rings, or whatever it is, there is always something you can do, and it's interesting to just contemplate, where does my power lie? What can I do? Right? You don't have to accept every change. You don't have to immediately go to war. There are many things in between that you can do. And I wonder how many people actually exercise that particular power. I wonder. We love to complain. We really do. We love to complain. But it's another thing to take a step, and then another step, and another step to try and solve something. I'd like to invite you to try it. Somehow I feel it's important in these times we are living in right now that we do more than complaining, especially on the echo chambers on social media. It's important to talk to people around us, be it by simply asking them a question. Hey, how do you see the developments in the world unfolding? What is your feeling about that? Often it's not very useful if you want to tell somebody or convey them to believe something, or if you want to hear something from them, or if you want to put something in their mind, it's often better to just ask a question. And immediately you know where they are, mentally, spiritually, politically, and you can move in a very subtle way, you can move from there. But often we say too much and we spook people. It's important to speak to people on their level of understanding and not introduce too much. But just saying, we can talk to people around us. We can have a real conversation without too many politics, but just out of concern. Not with conviction, like, oh, this must happen and these people are wrong and we need to do this and this. No, it's very important to ask the person you're talking to how they feel, and then to kind of let them know your concerns very mildly, openly. Just tell them how you feel, like how really, but tone it down a little bit would be my advice. I've tried many times to convince people of certain things. It doesn't work. It really doesn't work. But it is when you listen to them that they realize what is bothering them. Often people are bothered by something, but they don't think about it, only when you ask. So sometimes it's only when you ask the question that they realize, oh yeah, this is what I'm worrying about. And it allows for an opening for a real good conversation. So even though we cannot be like Gandalf, we can be like Frodo or Bilbo. We can be quite powerless, but still very influential if we dare to try and use the tools that we have instead of the tools that we wish we had. That's not very useful. You don't have those tools, but what you have is more than nothing. It really is. I was involved in a student uprising in 2015, even though I was not a student there. There was a university building that was being liberated according to the university students. They wanted more democratization and more decentralization, and they wanted to have more say in how their education was being formed. And quite frankly, the University of Amsterdam was actually looking to close certain departments. And that's very painful if you're a student there or a teacher. So there was a massive uprising, and they hijacked the building, and they slept there for over a month on the floor. And when I caught light of that, I was an internet activist. I was already always complaining about stuff. I was young and stupid, let's say, um, as you should be when you're that age. And I caught light of that movement. And when the building was hijacked, I went there immediately. And my wife was pregnant with our first child. But I went there. I stepped into the building, and it was like I stepped into another universe. I started talking with the students, and they were having meetings 3 times a day, like emergency meetings, and they would get together and figure out what are we gonna do now. Um, and I was there, and I voiced my opinion, and they learned to trust me. And at the end of the whole situation, I ended up doing their negotiations with the student board. Now, these are the big cats, the old politicians that have 10, 20 jobs everywhere in big corporations and big institutions like the University of Amsterdam. I did the negotiations because the students trusted me. And that's how important it is, how important it is to, when you feel the urge to step into a situation, to do it and just try. Honestly, like, just be honest about things. Just voice your opinion, listen to people, try to work with them. And I went from an internet activist to, well, at least momentarily, to somebody with influence, and I could make a difference. And it felt amazing. The revolutionary atmosphere there was amazing. It was hijacked by the woke left at some point, and they demanded genderless toilets in the building and whatnot. And all the leftist parties in the Netherlands started donating food and money to the movement, and it went all corrupt. But inside the very core of the movement was still the students and still the teachers, and I felt like I could make a very big difference, and I did. Even though I never went to university, it never appealed to me, let's say. But that's just one of many personal stories that shows you that you can walk into a very unknown place. I often had it with antique stores, for example. As a child, I would walk into an antique store with my mother, and all of a sudden you're in such a different place, meeting people that you've never met with such different interests. The smell is different, the light is different, the objects are different, everything is different. And it's lovely to put yourself in that position, to be somewhere very differently, and and try to make that space a little bit yours by communicating with it, with the space, with the people. So there you go. I think this is the video for today. We can do, first of all, we have to realize that yes, we may see many movies, read many books, and we can not be that. We cannot be there. We cannot step into some spaceship or whatever. But let's look around us. What can we do on a daily basis towards our loved ones? But then also extend into our communities and maybe on a national level. Um, and I think you'll discover that you can do far more than you ever expected. So if you feel that call because of everything that is happening, even only with tobacco and the war on tobacco, there's always something you can do. And there are victories, laying ahead that can be achieved. I'm absolutely certain because victories have been achieved by people who really tried really hard, with their mouth, with their time, energy, their money, they were able to achieve something. So who knows what's in store for you, what adventure lies beyond your thoughts of today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you another time. I hope you have a pleasant time wherever you are. Try to make it as good as possible. Bye bye.